All right, well, since Paul Dittman is next, Aaron and I are maybe just gonna wet your whistle and we'll let, yeah. Don't be, well, just try to forget everything you hear tonight by the time you listen to him, because we don't want to be measured by him. So that should be good, yeah. So I'm gonna try really hard to not stand in front of the screen or make you feel uncomfortable. I will apologize. Some slides are really hard to, you can't decipher them. That's why I'm going to follow along on my computer, and the stuff that you can't see, I'll try to describe. So we'll try to do our best to work with it. So I recognize some of you. Did you do the grazing school in Marshfield? Yep. And some of you have been part of the academy as well. So usually I'm talking about forages and kind of the nuts and bolts of grazing. So this is an opportunity for me to kind of stretch beyond what I typically talk about. Aaron's going to bat cleanup, which means he's going to clean up all the messes that I make. So, there, I have to make sure I change 2 slides there. So, in the Grassland Academy, we always start out with our why, and I wasn't going to do that, but I think it is an important part of this conversation. So I typically describe myself as wearing 2 hats, as a university outreach specialist and as a farmer. I'm not going to wear my farmer hat a whole lot tonight, but I do just want to kind of add some context to this. So my why, I have a lot of whys for what I do. Everything from the heritage of my family and agriculture. Conservation is very important to everything that we do. So even when we talk about finances, all of that has to work together. My family is a really big part of what I do, and I just feel really strongly about stewarding the resources that I've got the privilege to steward for a period of time. And so that's my why, and my why for why I'm even standing here talking about this tonight is without managed grazing and kind of the financial model that we're going to talk about tonight, I won't even have a farm. It really presented the only opportunity for us to have a farm. It was my lifelong dream. This is my 4th son, and he is, of all my kids, the one who really wants to be a farmer, just like I was. That's what he always says. And I know you can't read this. This is from several years ago, but this really irked me. This is from Progressive Farmer magazine. And the article said, how much money does it take to become a farmer? And on the bottom here, they concluded, if you add it all up, we arrive at $5.1 million. Wow, that's a big number. And it's out of reach for most young entrepreneurs. I just think that this is really tragic, that this is the message that we are, kids in FFA in schools or kids who are studying agriculture, we're telling them, if you don't inherit the farm or you don't know someone who you can transition the farm from, then good luck. It's just not going to work. And I just think that couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm hoping that some of you can hear that from Aaron and I both tonight. We both have a similar story like that. So the last thing I'll share, I think maybe there's one more about myself, is just kind of what our farm looks like right now. And the reason I'm sharing this is because enterprise selection, which is the first thing I'm going to really focus on tonight, was a really strong part of what we did. We're about 11 years into our operation now, and the process of enterprise selection, I can't underscore enough. Like just making sure that you're doing the right thing and not spending time doing the wrong thing. So this is kind of where we landed. So we've currently got 95 acres. We've got cool season perennial pastures. We do stockpile grazing and winter bale grazing. We now don't have black Angus anymore. We're all red Angus. Cow-calf pairs. We're finishing our steers and direct marketing, all of that. But the things on the bottom are really big. Our goals were to raise a family on the farm, to balance production and conservation. and to have farming be more than just a hobby for us. So this is just kind of a blend of what it looks like on our farm across the year. So the dairy heifers, that's kind of part of the past now. That was something that we did for a while to get to where we're going. And I'll maybe talk about that a little more and how that plays into enterprise selection. So here's one of those slides that I warned you about. What is an enterprise? According to Google, it's a project or undertaking, one that is difficult or requires effort. And it's also a business or a company. So when it comes to enterprise selection, I wonder why that did that. Enterprise selection, my definition is the process of identifying a business venture that fits your farm, land, skills, goals, and lifestyle, and is financially sustainable. So that's kind of going to be my working definition of enterprise selection. So that's enterprise selection. So what's an enterprise budget? So there's balance sheets, there's profit and loss statements. Those aren't quite an enterprise budget. So a balance sheet is something that we use to reveal the financial status of a farm via what it owns and what it owes. A profit and loss statement is used to measure the profitability of a farm. Both of those are helpful tools, but they're both kind of looking at what already happened. We have to be able to look at what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen. So an enterprise budget is used for planning and estimating revenues, costs, and profits for a single enterprise. So like on the profit and loss, we said of the entire farm, this is breaking it down to a component, a single enterprise on a per unit basis. So that would be per acre or per head. But we have to be careful and not put the cart before the horse. And I think I've seen this quite a bit in the last 10 years of doing this work. And I'm not sure if Aaron, if you've seen the same thing as well. But one thing about grazing or regenerative agriculture or conservation is it's really easy to drum up enthusiasm. We can go to pasture walks, show our farm, and people are going to be like, that's exactly what, and I did that too. I went to pasture walks. That's exactly what I want to do. And then we just want to emulate that. We want to copy that. And we have to be careful to not jump the process of figuring out if that enterprise is going to work for us, if that practice that we saw. So maybe this venture has a shot at making a few bucks, but will it leave you physically, mentally, emotionally, or relationally bankrupt? That's a question that we have to be able to answer first. Will it fulfill you? Is the enterprise conducive to your farm, land, skills, goals, and lifestyle? So that's really the first question that we need to answer. So the way that I like to think of this, and this you could pick apart, there could be 8 of these. I'm only showing 3 tanks that we're trying to keep from going dry. So we've got the financial budget, we've got the human budget, wellness, and we've got the pasture budget, forage. So we've got these 3 things that we're trying to all keep from going dry, and we're going on this trip, and the trip is the enterprise. So the enterprise is our roadmap. So we have some questions to ask. Thank you. What is your destination? That would be the farm and life goals. What route will you take to get there? That would be the enterprise. How much fuel will you need to get there? That would be your cost of production. Where are the refueling points? That would be your revenue and actually your cash flow, which is what Aaron's going to talk about. If you're going on a trip that is going to require more than 1 tank of gas, then you have to know that there's going to be some waypoints where you can refuel, and that's what the cash flow is. What will be left at the end of the journey? And that is profit or fulfillment. So I would recommend this book if anyone is unfamiliar with it. This is a very easy read, very simple to understand, put out by the Ranching for Profit folks. In there, they describe the process of implementing ideas. You could view this as the process of selecting an enterprise. So you start out with a situation report. What is needed? What's the issue? What's the goal? From there, you put together a proposal. That would involve gross margin, a cash flow, estimated capital, expected return on investment, and then identify the upside. What would be the positive outcomes? And then the downside, what could be some negative outcomes? And then score it. What is the likelihood of the upside and downsides to occur? And then identify some alternatives. These would be ideas to make the upside bigger and the downside smaller. And then check your emotions. How do you and your partners feel about the idea? Is everybody on board? If they're not, you better stop right now. And then make a decision. And if there are still some unknowns, then don't make the decision yet and develop a plan to further explore them. So this is kind of the same thing, but just a little, this is my way of describing what they did. So for enterprise selection, the questions we need to ask are, what am I most interested in and enthused by? If you're not interested in it or enthusiastic about it, then you really shouldn't even start doing it. What is my farm and land most suitable for? What are the neighborhood factors? That's a term that I made up, but I'll describe it. So in your neighborhood, you should take stock of who you've got available as a mentor. Who's someone who you could call when you're in a bind and you don't know what to do. You have something happened to an animal. I lost 2 animals to bloat in one of the first years of grazing, and that was very traumatic for me, and I didn't know what to do. I've been in farming my entire life, and all of a sudden I just watched my 1,600-pound bull tip over dead right in front of me, and I didn't know what to do. I needed someone to call. You need to have a mentor. Who do you have to help you if animals get out? Technical service providers. Are there custom operators who can make hay for you? Are there truckers? Who are the suppliers in the neighborhood? Is there a vet? Are there livestock markets? Are there processors available to you? Will you have a customer base? All of these are things that you don't want to think about when it's too late or when you need them. You want to think about it ahead of time. And then, what is my lifestyle most suitable for? So there's some lifestyle factors that you have to think about as well. Do you have an off-farm job? How much flexibility do you have? What about community involvement? If you're really involved with the town or the church or the school board, that's going to require some of your time as well. What about your family? Are they really busy? Are they all supportive of this? What about your hobbies? I love hunting more than almost any other hobbies, but there's times of the year when the bales need to get set out for bale grazing is also when I really want to be in the tree stand. Well, I have to be okay with that. It's a calculated thing. Age is part of it as well, our physical health and our capacity, mentally and emotionally. Is the enterprise financially sustainable? So what is profit? We talk about profit all the time, but what is it really? It's what remains at the end. It's the capital that we need for continuing the enterprise, and it is what differentiates a hobby from a business, regardless of scale. I don't really care what the scale is. A hobby is something that isn't going to be profitable. A business needs to be. And why that's the case is people grow resentful of expensive hobbies. When push comes to shove, there's going to be a time where something's got to go, and it's going to be that thing. That's going to be the thing on the chopping block. And they grow intolerant of unprofitable businesses. When push comes to shove, when there's no money and you have to look for where to trim fat, it's going to be that thing if it's not profitable. So when a tank runs dry and push comes to shove, there's three options. You could sell off equity, which would require you to downsize. You could quit the business altogether, which I don't think would be anybody's goal. Or you could borrow money, which at that point, now you're entering the downward spiral. To borrow money to try to prop up something that's already not profitable. None of these are good options, and so we enterprise budget to avoid that. The one thing I do want to mention, though, I don't want it to sound like I'm totally dogging on borrowing money. It's not inherently bad. It is best practice to avoid taking on debt, but it can be okay to borrow money if you're going to do it to make a calculated strategic business move when your enterprise budget and cash flow support that. So then the next thing, if we're going to be profitable, is to identify the greatest profit killers. So there's 4 of them. There's probably more, but the 4 that I'm going to point out. So the first would be you picked the wrong enterprise. You picked one that's unsuitable to the farm. You picked it for some other reason. Legacy farming is one that I see a lot, and I'll touch on that maybe on the next slide. But basically, the way it's always been done, I'm going to just keep doing it because that's the way it's always been done. That can take you in the wrong direction in a hurry. Cost, too much spending is a profit killer. Ignorance is a huge one. People actually don't know if they're making money or not. If they've got money in the account at the end of the year, they're assuming they're making money, but they don't actually have a budget, so they're unaware of their costs and returns. And I'm shocked that, this is kind of standard operating for a lot of farms. Supplementary income also can lead to ignorance, because if you're making enough money on an off-farm job that you don't really care if you're profitable or not, you can actually be masking some super unprofitable decisions just because you're propping it up with money from off the farm. Now, maybe that's not a big deal, but then again, if push comes to shove and something's got to go, this might end up being the thing that has to go. And then dilution. Too many enterprises. You've got so many irons in the fire that you can't really do any of them particularly well, so you don't even know which one is bleeding you. So supplementary income. It can be helpful to get started when you just don't have capital, but it's risky because it's not constant, it's not infinite, and it's shared. What I mean by that is you may be buying groceries and paying your electrical bills and buying baseball cleats with the same money that you're paying for hay, and that's risky when it's done that way. So as long as supplementary income exists, it can mask unprofitable decisions as well. I mentioned legacy farming. I don't know if that's the best term for it. That's just how I refer to it. If anyone thinks of a better way to describe that, I would be interested in hearing that. But existing enterprises. So this would be if you've got a farm. So you could be taking over for someone, or you could have bought a farm that's got a whole bunch of infrastructure, and you feel hell-bent on using everything because it's there. But it shouldn't be assumed that it's profitable. You need to actually figure out if it's profitable. Existing assets should not be assumed useful. So classic examples would be you've got a lane cutting through your farm. That might not be the best place for a lane for a well-designed pasture system. Don't let the fact that a field lane exists dictate where you're going to put a pasture lane. We actually see that a lot. A barn is another one. Just because the barn is there doesn't mean that filling it with animals is going to be a good idea. Same thing with feedlot. Just because you have a grain bin doesn't mean you have to feed grain. Just because you have equipment doesn't mean it's going to be profitable for you to make all your own hay. You might be better off selling the equipment and hiring someone to do it in some cases. And type of livestock is another one. It's important to not let your operational decisions be made by objects or individuals who have no investment in your operation or economics. Does that make sense? Okay, so getting to, and that doesn't look the same on there as it does on my screen. That's okay. So practically speaking, how do we go about enterprise budgeting? So you're going to hear more about it next week. And so that's not a cop-out for me to just gloss it over. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it today, but I'm just going to give you some things that can help you start thinking about this. So my recommendation is to start out in the simplest terms at a very rudimentary level. I call it the napkin. And then once you do that, you can graduate to the envelope. Just start building out, start collecting information. As you learn about the practice, you go from the napkin to the envelope, and then you continue refining it as you gather actual numbers, whether it's from your own experience or from people who are doing it. And you graduate from the envelope to the legal pad. And then you just keep scrutinizing it, and eventually you'll have a spreadsheet that you can scrutinize every enterprise and every decision with eyes on the bottom line. My point for showing this is there's a lot of tools out there that are very helpful for enterprise budgeting, but I don't always recommend that you start right with those tools. If you don't have a lot of background with budgeting or finances in general, start at a very basic level. Don't feel like you have to use a really fancy spreadsheet from the start. There's three basic components of an enterprise budget: your income or revenue, your fixed cost, which is ownership costs regardless of product being produced. So examples of that would be interest, taxes, insurance, facility repair. And then you've got your variable costs, which vary with the product being produced. So they're like very specific to that enterprise. Examples would be seed, fertilizer, feed, mineral, marketing, and land rent. So you've got profit equals total income minus your costs. And that's really what an enterprise budget is. So what does an enterprise budget tell you? So obviously it tells you your profit, which is your net income. It also tells you your profit margin. It also helps you to understand what your sales goals need to be to just cover your costs. It helps you to develop price points for your products to ensure that you're going to make a profit. This is something a lot of farmers feel like they don't have the power to do, especially other commodities. A lot of farmers, we say, are price takers, not price makers. Aaron and I represent what do we want to call it? Group of people who try to be price makers. And that's how, especially on smaller scale operations, we can make an attempt to be profitable by not just being at the mercy of the market. We can identify enterprise inefficiencies, and we can validate the continuation of the enterprise. So I mentioned profit margin. That's revenue minus cost divided by revenue, and I'll show that a little more on the next slide. Gross margin is the percentage of revenue that is profit. So this is just showing what we want to shoot for profit margin. What's really interesting is if you look at any industry outside of agriculture, they're shooting for 50 to 70% profit margins a lot of times, and anything less than that they will consider not good enough. In agriculture, we're saying 25% is pretty dang good. So this is from University of Minnesota, from their FinPAC program. But if we're operating up in that 25%, it's considered efficient. If we're down in the 15% or lower, is considered inefficient. So I know you can't see the numbers here, but this is just an example of going from the envelope to the legal pad. So this is just an example that I pulled off the top of my head from my experience over the years. This is for a cow-calf herd that's finishing their steers, and this is for 10 steers. And so you've got your 10 head on top with what you would expect to make for revenue, and you've got your fixed costs, which are insurance, taxes, possibly a tractor loan, facilities. Then you've got your variable costs, which is your seed and your mineral, land rent, custom operating, trucking, processing, fuel. And what you're doing is you're getting it down to a per head basis. And in the end, you can figure out what your profit is and what your profit margin is. So just a few things to think about. So when you're doing this, you have to figure out how to divvy up your fixed costs. If you've got multiple enterprises, you can't really apply a lot of your fixed costs to just one enterprise. You have to figure out how to spread it across those. It is fair when you're starting out at a very basic level to leave fixed costs out, like your first go around, because you're going to have those costs no matter what, regardless of what enterprise. So if you're comparing different enterprises, I think it's fair, and you could argue this, you've got more experience than I do with this, but I think it could be fair to leave it out for the first go around, because you're going to have those costs no matter what. So if you're comparing different enterprises to see how they turn out. Profit margin. So on this example here, the profit margin on direct market steers looks good because of the cow-calf operation that's providing homegrown steers. But then once you go and you look at the entire beef enterprise, which has the homegrown steers and the cow-calves, now the profit margin's a little lower. And so it is helpful to break it down into different enterprises so you can see how each of them are doing. But that cow-calf part of it, where you're developing homegrown steers, that kind of gets into some advanced budgeting, where now you're looking at opportunity cost. And we're not going to get a whole lot into that today, but I just wanted to mention that term as something else that some of the more advanced budgeting tools will help you to calculate. And you can use this information to consider how to improve certain parts, like the cow-calf portion of the enterprise.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I am of the opinion that when you're doing enterprise analysis, it's easiest to start at the very least on doing a gross margin analysis, where you, like Jason said, we ignore fixed costs. If you, for example, have, like Jason's saying, you have a tractor that's shared across multiple enterprises, don't include that tractor depreciation, tractor loan, et cetera, into the equation. And so when you get done comparing multiple enterprises, if you have a gross margin, which ignores all those fixed costs, that's really high, like 40, 50%, there's enough there that's going to cover fixed costs, unless you have outlandishly high fixed costs. If you get done with your gross margin analysis and you've got a gross of 10%, well, it's probably not enough to cover your fixed costs. So that's why I agree with Jason that, like, don't ignore the fixed costs in the first round. It's only if we really have to dive into the nitty gritty when we're talking about enterprise selection here. Yeah, because like people get so hung up in the weeds, like, oh, is it 5% or 7% of my tractor that goes to this versus that? It's like, it doesn't matter, just ignore it. Put it in its own category. In fact, in my accounting spreadsheet, I have just a fixed cost line, or the old farm, I call farm overhead. I just ignore all that stuff. If I can't allocate it to a specific enterprise, it just goes in that bin, and I worry about it later. And so, yeah, just don't even let it factor in your decision making, unless we're really starting to split hairs.
And I think a lot of this stuff can be bewildering at first, and so I think the point here is don't be afraid to really start at a very basic level. I think that's what I want the take home here to be. Does anyone have questions before we move on from that? I just want to make sure no one's left behind or has questions on any of that.
So your gross margin that you're writing down, that's your actual profit after all expenses.
And that's just for like that very specific enterprise. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess I've heard it other times before where like you had talked about that you take your direct cost of that enterprise or your revenue minus cost and then divide by revenue. Is that right?
Yeah, that's gross margin.
Yep.
Gross margin, right?
Yep.
But then that number you come up with, then that's what you have to work with to pay for your overhead.
100%.
Yeah.
So then you put, if you were figuring it that way, are you still putting like your hourly wage in there, or is that part of your overhead if you're still small scale?
So everybody does that different. You can answer, and I will tell you that the next couple of slides, I'm going to give an example from another farmer, and I'll show how he does it. But I'm curious what you would say.
So when I'm doing enterprise budget, I include labor because I want to do a true economic budget. Off to the side, I'll do a cash budget on the same spreadsheet. So basically accounting for what are the actual cash expenditures I have. But I think it's really important to do true economic budgets because, so like for example, you guys, a couple of you guys have your cow-calf operations, right? Yep. If you do the actual honest hourly labor on it, it's brutal, right?
Yeah.
Like if you consider what you pay yourself on a per hourly basis, you might as well go work at Walmart.
Right.
Often, not necessarily, but like oftentimes, right? I've got a cow-calf operation too. But I just want to be honest about what are the opportunity costs that are involved. So like I have a number of different enterprises. And I didn't come up with this on my own. I worked with a guy named Andy Larson, you guys might run across before. And when we really dug into this stuff, it was like, what was actually worth my time and effort to do? And it really opened up my eyes to like, spend less time doing this, more time doing this.
Right. Do a time audit.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's important. But like I said, I do kind of side by side an economic budget and a cash budget. So similar to things like depreciation. The depreciation is not a cash expense, right? Uncle Sam lets you write it off on your Schedule F, but you don't write a check to anybody for depreciation. However, stuff wears out, stuff breaks down, it has to be replaced. And so in your economic budget, you should have something amortized in for replacement factor, even though you're not writing the check for that every year. You only replace that tractor every 15 years. You don't do it every year. But you better be making sure you have enough money that you're making so that when it does break, you can replace it.
So you didn't, that last part, you didn't include that in your enterprise budget there.
The labor.
You have to be replacing animals on a pretty regular basis as they wear out.
Sure. I mean, depending on the situation. Yeah. Yep.
So I'm just the JV here today. Mike was supposed to be. He was asked before I was asked to speak, and I did ask for his permission to show a couple of his slides. So Mike is a good friend of mine over by Colby. He raises custom dairy heifers, or is a custom dairy heifer raiser for multiple farmers in the neighborhood. He raises wean calves through pre-fresh. And he grazes them in the summer months. That's a very critical part of his business model. And he also direct markets grass-fed beef and poultry and pork as well. And you're not going to see any of these numbers here. And I didn't intend for you to see the numbers anyway. But what I want to show you is how he uses his budget, and that's the main point I want you to get out of this. So Mike, his goal and the goal of an enterprise budget is to answer the question, how confident are we that this enterprise will cover the cost of our bills and expenses and then some? And the then some is what's left in the tank at the end. So in his budget, he gets everything down to a per head per day because that's how he gets paid. Thank you. So he's got his fixed costs, and what was my point of that going to be? So he's got it down to a cost per month with his fixed cost. And if I go to the next slide, and he gets everything down to a per head per day. So he knows what his fixed costs are costing him per head per day. He says every single business decision can be translated to head days. So if he's gonna look at buying a new skid steer, he's gonna use those numbers down to per head per day to justify whether or not he can purchase that. So he knows what his fixed costs are per head per day, and then he's got his variable costs, and he gets those down to per head per day as well. So that's how that is why managed grazing is such a major component of his operation. And the reason I'm showing you this, I know there's a lot of numbers here, and I don't want to like lose you or gloss over anything, but what I want you to see out of this is how powerful the enterprise budget is for him. He knows exactly what the value of having those heifers on pasture is for him. So if he would raise them conventionally in the freestall, it's going to cost him $3.78 per head per day. His cost of managed grazing, he knows, is $2.57 per head per day. So he's saving $1.21 per head per day every day that he's got them out on pasture. So Mike says that at an income of $3.15 per head per day, managed grazing is essential to making a profit on my custom heifer operation. Yes.
Can you go back to the previous?
I bet I know what you're going to ask. I don't know how to make this go back.
What do you think I'm going to ask?
378.
No.
Okay, the conventional is costing him $378, and he's charging $3.15 per head per day.
My question is more about the feeding. Just cut that at the end, way on the bottom right.
Yep.
Isn't that redundant to including haylage, pasture, corn silage, and the left?
So his is it's a little bit of a hybrid. His farmers hold him to a very high daily gain standard that very, very rarely he can meet with just pasture. So they're getting a partial TMR every day. So his whole farm is set up for them to come in and get a couple pounds of a TMR. So this cost would actually be less if you didn't have that component of it, if you actually had dairy farmers who didn't have that standard. So
that feeding, that's the cost of feeding.
Yep.
Right, that's not the feed.
Right. Yeah.
Like the.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. That's the labor and the fuel and
You're a good farmer, Rick. Nobody likes to think about the cost of feed.
So anyway, my point in sharing that was to just see, and then this goes to the question earlier about labor. So now when you look at what's left, this is how Mike does it. So when you look at what's left, you figure out what your salary is. So if he's feeding with his cost for conventional feeding, if he would do that for 12 months, he'd be losing $36 an hour. If he grazes for 6 months and has them in the barn for 6 months, he makes $21 an hour. And so now on these, you can see how incentivized he is to figure out how much to extend the grazing season. Every additional month he can have them out there, his wages go up. And he wouldn't know that without having a very fine-tuned enterprise budget. I'm almost to the end, Aaron. So this goes back to, this is another point that I really thought was eye-opening from ranching for profit. So cost. one of the #1 profit killers. So there's 2 ways to double profit. In this example, you've got a cow-calf operation with $100,000 of revenue, $80,000 of cost, and $20,000 of profit. So if they want to double their profit, their first option is to increase their scale by 100% to double profit. So in doing so, you can see how much they're also increasing their costs. That's really, really risky, really stressful. The other way of doubling their profit is to decrease their cost by 25%. Might still be pretty difficult, but it seems a little more feasible maybe than looking at going up to $160,000 worth of cost. But this is why I thought this was so eye-opening, is because this is just a perspective that we don't ever hear about. All the programming out there for livestock, not all of it, but a whole lot of it for decades, for generations, has been based on how do we increase, how do we produce more, how do we increase our scale. It's all based on that. It's never how can we decrease our costs by 25%. Spending your way to profit is like borrowing your way out of debt, was their quote. Okay, so then last couple slides are just to point out some resources. There's going to be, at the end of my presentation, there's going to be a link where you can access all of these. So there's quite a few tools out there, and as I alluded earlier, start out with the napkin or the envelope or the legal pad. You don't have to start out with this. Get some experience before you jump to this. So this is actually the UW extension. If you Google search, well, and I have the link as well, but UW extension enterprise tools, they've got them for every kind of livestock, every crop. This is the cow-calf one. I actually really like it. I think it's really well done and very helpful. The Iowa State livestock enterprise budget is a little bit more older style, and it's also a little more focused on like feedlot style raising of beef, although it works also for pasture. But where that's helpful is they update it every year with numbers. And if you have no idea what numbers used for certain inputs, that can give you a good idea. And then we've got the enterprise or the compass tools. So there's the pasture-based beef enterprise calculator. So that's just focused. That's an enterprise budget for beef. And then here we have the livestock compass, which basically every class of livestock you can develop a budget for. But again, these are pretty advanced, so I wouldn't recommend starting with those. And then just the last couple points I have. So these are just some pictures of my farm, like on the way, and I'm not implying that I've reached where I want to be. I still haven't, but like on the way, we did custom grazing of beef cattle at times, custom grazing of dairy cattle in order to get ourselves there. We never could just start out by buying all the animals to be at max capacity right away. We'd still be in a huge hole trying to dig out if we did that. So we had to ramp up to that. And then the other thing is some unanticipated things happen along the way. So these are my kids. They've gotten older now. We're 11 years into our operation, and now they're getting more helpful. And we started some other enterprises that I never even thought. And I didn't even think of it. This is not me making a sales pitch or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that I think when we take a systematic approach to finding the right enterprises and not getting so diluted that we've just got too many irons in the fire and we can't really get good at any of them, it leaves opportunities like this. You can act on opportunities as they arise, whereas if we're just so spread thin, we don't even recognize them. And my mentor, when I was getting started, always said, just figure out what you're good at. We started out trying a bunch of different things, and he said, what is the thing that you're most enthused by? And just get really good at that, and then figure out what you're good at after that. And I think that was some of the best advice that we got. So that link there is where all the resources I mentioned can be found, or the QR code if you're into that as well. So thanks for your attention. And Aaron, now it's time for you.
Before I jump, I made some notes. I was a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate and emphasize that you said that you did.
Reiterate or correct?
No correction. No, I think we should do more of these tag teams because you spurred thoughts in my mind that I didn't come up with myself. So, for example, you talked about dilution as a profit robber. I think that's something that's kind of a hobby horse of mine right now. Is like Joel Salatin has led many of us down a path that I don't think is a good one. Like trying to do 18 different things and like well, I guess, but I mean, like, we all got inspired by Joel Salatin, right? Like he's the godfather of a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, like you can only do so many things, and when you do 10 things, you do none of them well. And that certainly has happened on my farm. Like we're not doing Pastures Pig anymore. We were good at Pastures Pig, but when we ran the numbers, it's like the effort wasn't worthwhile. So it's like stop doing that. Supplemental income. Use it to grow, not to operate. That's my farm. So for example, like our farm, we've been able to grow our farm because part of the success is because we have not had to pull family living from the farm. So any profits that we made just turbocharged our growth because we didn't have to pull it. However, we set up our farm right away that it was profitable without off-farm income. That way, that's why we've been able to grow so rapidly, because we were able to just only focus on growth instead of having the whole family living. So that's my philosophy on supplemental income. And you talk about legacy farming things, like existing assets and putting that being stuck in your ways because of that. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. That's one of my favorite little economic terms. Like just because you spent money on something or you have something sitting around doesn't mean that it is worthwhile to continue to use it. Or, you know, if you spend a bunch of money on something and you decide that at the end of the day this is not the right thing to do, it doesn't matter that you spent the money on it already. If it's not the right thing to do, it's not the right thing to do. So forget it. You know, money is gone. Put it out of your mind. So anyway, those are just some thoughts that were spurred from you talking. So excellent. Good job, Jason. And I would love to just keep talking about enterprise budgeting and stuff with Jason. It gets me excited. But my job today is to talk about cash flow planning. So I got to forget about all the fun things that Jason talked about, and I got to talk about the hard stuff. Cash flow planning. Not that it wasn't hard, but like cash flow planning it's not as sexy. It's just not. You're not getting to figure out like where is your goal and what's your vision and all this stuff. This is where, to me, like the rubber meets the road. Okay, so a little bit about me. That's me, my family, my wife, Erin. Yes, Aaron and Erin. And our daughter, Nora, and our son, Levi, who are now both much bigger than that from that picture. So we started farming in 2016. I guess you could say we bought our place in fall of 2016. We got our first livestock in 2017. We're first generation farmers. We did not come from a farm background. And so this is all kind of, you know, we're living in this experience of figuring this out as we go. And it's been, by the grace of God and mentors like Rick. Rick is one of the first people I ever came across and led me down, started me down this path. Going to the GrassWorks conference in 2015, that was one of the most pivotal moments of my life, was attending the GrassWorks conference in 2015. There have been a lot of, and I could name a lot of people. Ron Shep, I got to throw him in there. A lot of great people that have helped us get down our path. Yeah, Jason.
I have to say something about the GrassWorks conference because I've never forgotten it. But I remember one of the first times I met you, we were having a conversation about our farms, and I was telling you about how frustrated I was with my 1968 tractor. And I'm like, I'm so tempted to just go take out a loan and get a new one. You're like, don't do it, man. You gotta resist. You gotta hold off as long as you can.
Yep.
And for so many years, I was like, I remembered, it was like your voice echoing in my head.
Oh, that's great.
For some reason, it hung there so strong, and I finally got a different tractor last year. Hold on.
You got it, yeah. And I've reached that point too. Like, this is a long, well, whatever. Well, Jason, we're here. So Jason and I, we like to talk about this stuff. And one of the things that I particularly am passionate about is consider capital allocation. Like, where do you invest your money? Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck, as Jason said, for where you're putting your money? And like, equipment is almost always the worst place, right? But there comes a time when you don't have a choice, or your life will just be better, right? And so I, for example, said I would never own a big pickup truck, a cattle trailer, and a flatbed trailer. And last year I bought all three. So, so there comes a point where you reach a certain scale that you just got to make some of those investments. So don't feel bad about it, Jason. I'm right there with you. But anyway,
I got a free hat.
So I didn't get that. I bought all used stuff, so there's nothing came with it. But all right. So anyways, so I started farming for real in 2017, and kind of in the process of getting into this is when I got really interested in farm finance and management. And so another name drop, like Serge Koenig. I worked with Serge in my first job out of school, and he and I we're trying to figure out how do we get more farmers to adopt managed grazing. It's like, oh, it's such a win-win. It's like a great lifestyle. It's great for the environment. What's the missing piece? It's the money side. How do we make this financially appealing? And so Serge and I really dug into that. I picked up Paul Dittman's book, so another name drop for Paul's session next week or whenever that is. Paul Dittman's book, Fearless Farm Finances, like opened my mind to all this stuff. And so I highly recommend anybody read Fearless Farm Finances. So I started diving into this rabbit hole of farm finance, and it led me to become a farm business instructor with Northeast Wisconsin Tech College in 2019. So I've been there ever since. And so I do teaching and consulting with about 55 farms north and west of Green Bay. View of my particular farm. So we're up in Pastures, an hour north of Green Bay. We graze a little over 200 acres right now. We have a grass-fed beef herd. We direct market all those cattle. Sold 24 last year. We do organic pastured chickens, which has quickly become our largest enterprise. We'll do almost 6,000 birds this year. And then custom grazing dairy heifers. We'll have about 300 heifers this year. And yeah, I should actually illuminate this because as of last week, we're not doing pastured pigs anymore this year. So they're fun, they're great, they're sociable, but you make like $3,000 for all your effort. It's like, eh. So anyway, that's my farm. All right, so cash flow planning. I get really jazzed about cash flow planning because to me, it's like this is the backbone of the business. This is what separates your hobby from your business, like is managing your dollars and cents. The long and short of it is profitable businesses go broke every day. Like people come up with the enterprise that is going to fit their lifestyle, has a good profit potential at a certain point in time, but they don't pay their bills on the way to get to that profitability point. And so they go broke. In addition, like doing the cash flow planning process gives you an idea of the health of your business. If you're consistently running into roadblocks where like, I'm running out of money, something's not right here. We gotta change what we're doing. And it can really help us determine areas of strength and weakness. And we'll dive into that more. There's kind of like two big reasons for why this doing the cash flow planning process is super important. The most obvious one is to anticipate shortfalls. Farming is a very seasonal business, right? Especially here in Wisconsin. Like we have 6 months of winter where we don't have a lot of income coming in potentially. And then spring comes and we have to spend a boatload of money to operate. We got to buy seed, we got to buy fertilizer, we got to buy animals, whatever, all that stuff. We spend all that money in the springtime. And then like for me, the month of July. July is always a tough month because we spent all this money and we don't start butchering cattle, for example, until July. So our beef money doesn't start coming in until August. We only had maybe 2 rounds of chickens come in so far, but we've got 4 groups of chickens on the ground. So like, you know, the bills outweigh the income.
in the first half of the summer for me in particular. And so July all of a sudden is gone. Yeah, and hey, I buy all my hay in June. I don't make any bets. I get as much first crop as I can get my hands on because it's guaranteed. You don't know what the rest of the summer is going to bring for rainfall. And so yeah, I blow my whole wad right away in the springtime, and now I got no money. So how do we figure out how to manage through this? Well, we got a cash flow plan. Like on a more optimistic note, identifying opportunities. So for example, this has happened several times in the last few years, is I've been approached with opportunities to buy cattle. And it's a good deal. And so it's like, okay, there's money in the checkbook, but if I spend all this money right now, is that going to hurt me 6 months from now? Punch it into the cash flow plan, see what's going to happen. Are you going to be okay to make this investment? Is this a good idea or not? You know, can you take advantage of an opportunity without hurting yourself long term? And so it works on both ends. We got to figure out how do we make up for those shortfalls? How do we take advantage of a windfall? So yeah, we got to plan ahead. How are we going to deal with those shortfalls and surpluses when they come? So the cash flow planning basics is we're just making a list of all our anticipated income and expenses, but we're going to do it for every single month of the year. So any of you have like a FSA note or a farm loan, you got to turn in a cash flow plan to the bank, right? And what are they like an annual plan is good enough for them, right? Yeah. You know, like you slap down, okay, I'm going to spend $10,000 on seed and blah, blah, blah. Like,
It's pretty big.
yeah, is it useful to you? No.
I mean, it helps you a little bit.
It's better than nothing.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing. But it's not going to help you figure out if you're going to run out of money in July or not. It tells you you're going to have money at the end of the year. But again, what if we don't make it to the end of the year? So doing it on a monthly basis is really, really important. Like Jason said, there's a lot of different tools and things you can use for all of this financial stuff. The Iowa State 12-step process is just a useful way to think through this. It's by no means like the only thing to do. And actually, I don't even use their spreadsheet, but the thought process is what counts here. So go ahead, Chris. So the first step is to just write down on a piece of paper, what are your tentative plans for the year? So like this is from me from a couple of years ago. I was like, okay, I was going to sell 21 steers. I was going to sell 20 pigs. I was going to raise 2,200 chickens, graze 180 heifers, and 20 custom steers. And so like, okay, this is the basic stuff I've got. My enterprises, these are the products I'm going to produce. So for you cow-calf guys, how many calves do I expect to hit the ground? How many heifers am I going to retain versus steers? How many sides of beef do I plan to sell? How many chickens? If you're a crops person, how many acres of corn? This applies to all of your different enterprises. Just kind of lay out what is the farm plan for the year. You don't even have to have any financials attached to it all. Just figure out what are we going to produce. Next thing, go back to our inventory and figure out what do we have on hand. This is where a balance sheet comes in, which Jason mentioned. All of you should be doing a balance sheet for December 31st to January 1st, baseline benchmark balance sheet. Because some of this stuff on here we're going to utilize during the year, right? So we have feed, we have marketable livestock, et cetera, that can turn into cash. And so we have to know, what do we have on hand? What are those current assets that we have that are available that we can either feed or sell to turn into cash? Step 3 is estimate your feed requirements if you need them. So I have a beef herd, so they need feed. I have an Excel calculator that I use to calculate how many tons of feed I'm going to need for the year. I raise chickens, and so I know that each chicken takes 15 pounds of feed to get from day 1 to day 55. And so however many chickens I'm going to raise times 15 pounds of feed tells me how much feed I need for the year. So whatever your enterprise is, you got to do that kind of basic background math to figure out, how much feed am I going to need? Because that's on a livestock farm, this is our major expense, right? Feed is our #1 expense on a livestock farm. All right, yeah, this is just Excel screenshot of my hay calculator. Nothing fancy, but it tells you, then you put in your price, how big your bales are, how many bales you're going to need, how many tons you're going to need, what's that going to cost you for the year. So. All right, so then going back to your inventory, so we have to look at how much feed do we need, how much do we have on hand. So that leaves us the number that we either need to produce or we need to buy. So that's, again, figuring out these basic big numbers that we need. If you produce your own feed, okay, hopefully you can meet that. If not, where are we going to find the feed to make up that windfall. Again, I know we call it cash flow planning, but in order to get to the actual cash flow, you have to do all of the background information and figure out what is the major expense is going to be for the year. Okay, next one. Oh, that turned out not very good. Livestock, then this is where we start figuring out our revenue. So livestock sales, whatever the case may be, whatever products you produce from your farm, so we got finished beef, feeder calves, chickens, pigs, your dairy, milk, the calves, bull calves, cull cows, etc. Whatever the products are for your farm, how much income do you expect to bring in from each of those sources? So this is just a screenshot from the accounting spreadsheet that I use. This is not even all of my customers, some of my products and customers and stuff. And so you can see I sell bulk beef, chicken, pork, all sorts of stuff. So. Okay, go ahead. If you're in the cropping business, feed and grain sales, same thing. How many tons of silage, how many bales of hay, bushels of corn, etc. Figuring out all our top line income stuff. Other income. So this would be government payments. Maybe you got an EQIP contract or a CSP contract, or if you're like in the dairy, DMC payments, custom work if you do any custom work. Interest, dividends, maybe. Yeah. Then off-farm income. We already talked about this with Jason. So again, I said my philosophy on it. If you are using off-farm income to pay for family living, I think that's great. If you're using off-farm income as an investment into a profitable farm enterprise, I think that's great. You got to get the money from somewhere, right? Like nobody starts off with a fully functioning operating farm, right? So again, using W-2 income as an investment, I think is great. Using it as a crutch to prop up an unprofitable farm business, I mean, you do what you want with your money, but I got more fun things to do as a hobby than throw my hard-earned W-2 money into a farm that loses money. So again, my personal thoughts. There are plenty of people that have other opinions. I will not hoist them upon you. Okay, then direct expenses, and this is, really this should be about like 25 slides on direct expenses, right? But like, everything you're gonna spend money on, that all goes in. And again, this takes a lot of time to figure out all this stuff, right? I mean, your fuel, your seed, your breeding costs, custom hired, taxes, insurance, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Like, the income side is generally pretty easy to figure out. It's the expense side where takes a lot more time, but you got to do it. So figure out where all those income or where all those expenses are going to be. Okay, next one. The debt repayments. So this is part of your cash flow, right? And part of the reason why Jason and I are very debt averse is because it's not just a matter of having that debt hanging over you. It's an additional crunch on your cash flow, right? So how are those payments structured? If you have annual operating loans or lines of credit or something, are you paying that interest monthly or paying it quarterly? Do you pay it all back at the end of the year? Your term debts, if you have equipment loans or land loans, again, how are we paying those? You pay those every month, you pay them quarterly, annually. That makes a big impact on how that cash flow is going to operate, right? If you have to pay them monthly, now we have all that, that's an additional thing we have to pay throughout the entire year. If it's annual, generally, on farms, we have lots of income in the fall, and so that's why annual repayments are sometimes more convenient. However, you get more accrued interest, so you have a bigger payment at the end of the year than you would have if you paid it monthly. So these are all things to consider when you're taking out loans. This is not a lesson on loan taking out, but anyway. All right. Okay, so we did our basic top line income. These are our enterprises. This is how much money we're going to get from those. We got all of our expenses hammered out. Now we want to make some capital purchases. So potentially, so we're going to buy some machinery, buy some land. Oh, that'd be sweet. Good luck. Buy some cattle. I'm always buying cattle. I can't help myself. But yeah, so now that we've taken in basically the operating costs, now let's look at these are the capital purchases that we would like to make during the year. Punch those into our cash flow. Okay, here's some. So Iowa State puts this at 11, non-farm expenses, basic family living, right? Putting shoes on the kids' feet. I am of the opinion that this should basically be number 1 instead of number 11. But most farmers, this is exactly where it goes. It goes right at the end, right? Whatever's left over at the end, that's what we get. And that's a real problem, because if you only take what's left, there's usually not much left at the end, right? And this is just a financial philosophy thing that I've come to through reading and just, you know, life experience. Like if you don't set a profit goal or a family living draw goal and make that a priority, it gets whittled away, right? And I think that's why a lot of farmers live in, you know, borderline poverty, because when something breaks, something unexpected comes up, the first thing is, oh, I guess we just, you know, we're not going to get paid this month, or we're not going to, that's a lot of money out of our pocket. Instead of going back to the plan and saying, okay, we want to protect that family living nugget. What else are we going to change to make that a reality? So I would encourage you all, make this a number that you put in on the very top of your, you know, your cash flow priorities is what's the number that you need for family living, you know, and take that out as a draw every month. That's my recommendation. Again, you can have lots of people have opinions, but that's
I have a
yeah.
question, because you've worked with a lot of farmers.
Yeah.
Do most farmers split their personal finances from their farm finances?
Dude, a surprising number do not. I will say most good farms do. And that's a judgment term, good farm. But like a lot of well-managed farms do. That was something, and again, I've done a lot of things wrong, but that was one thing we did right from the beginning is I opened up a different checking account to manage the farm finances from. Do not manage your farm and personal finances together for a number of reasons. But especially because of this one, because next thing you know, all that money that was supposed to go to your family's gone.
So when you talk about family living, that's basically money that's being transferred from the farm over to personal finance.
Exactly. You should have, again, my opinion, you should have an automatic transfer set up that on the first of every month, whatever the number is, $3,000 or whatever, goes from your farm account into the family checking account. That's my philosophy. You know, because if you don't, then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone, right? So sorry, you're gonna say something.
That's what you were saying before, is that once you start pulling the wage from your enterprises, then that's what you would put towards your personal income from the farm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that number, again, it's gonna be different for everybody, right? But have a number. And even like, again, if you're not, I don't know, how many, you guys full-time farm or side?
Family, full-time farm, cattle.
Okay, yeah. So I would encourage you that when it becomes a priority, and again, if it's not gonna be a full-time thing, pull something. Like,
Well, like, what are you doing?
yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Do
You're not
something.
pulling nothing.
Yep. I used to joke, like there's the cash, the cash drawer in the closet, like, and when we want to go for a date night to Culver's, you know, you grab $30 and yank it out of the cash drawer, and I'd always joke to my, there's family draw. That's it. There you go. See, don't say the farm didn't do anything for you. You know, I'm grateful that things have changed in the 8 years that we've been at this, but I had to incentivize her somehow to keep going with this. So. All right, go ahead. So then, you know, you summarize it all. So, and I'll show you the spreadsheet that I use for this, but you know, you can do this all by hand if you want, but I like somebody else to do the math for me. But you just add up all the income for month by month. January, we add up all our income sources, add up all our expense sources, subtract the expenses from our income. Now at the top of the next February, this is our opening balance. Add all our income expected for the month, subtract out all the expenses for the month. There's our closing balance for the month. Poof, now opening balance for March. Income, expense, and just go through the whole year and see how that shifts. So Kristen, go ahead and, so this is a screenshot. You're not going to be able to see very well. I actually do my cash flow by enterprise just to keep it more organized. And so I'll give you a quick brief look at, I should take this with me, huh? A brief look at what I use for a cash flow plan. And don't judge me, it's super ugly, and I've never taken the time to actually make it pretty, but it does what I need it to do. So again, this is a very ugly spreadsheet that I have created over several years. I need to clean it up. But so let's just go through one particular one, and I'll do my best here. So at the top line, this is my custom grazing enterprise. Again, I never cleaned them up. So this is my custom grazing heifer enterprise. Oops, this is not going to go well. I should have not done this. So I've just made some notes here about how many heifers at what price I expect, for a particular month. So in May, I'm gonna have 270 heifers for 20 days, June, 270 for the full month, and I get paid the month after they go in, right? I have them, I bill on the next month. So I'm expecting $10,000 in June for my May grazing, $15,000 in July for my June grazing, et cetera, throughout the year. So that's my income for that particular enterprise. And then different expense lines. You guys can, again, I've got it all together. It's gross, but so supplements, feed. I feed supplemental grain for my heifers. So every month, what do I expect to pay for that? Because I've done the math. They feed 4 pounds per head per day. So I know for every month I need this many tons of feed at whatever the price is, $289, I think right now is what they're saying. Diesel, vet visit, vaccines or meds, pink eye is killing me always. Mileage for driving around on the different farms I got heifers on. I graze across 4 different sites, so I have to do a lot of driving. Rent, pasture rent, I rent most of my land, a little bit for repairs on there. So that's what's in my heifer enterprise. I've got same one for all of my different enterprises. So here's chickens, again, I won't bore you with it. Boy, this is not responding well. Again, I've got expecting a certain amount of income for every month for the chickens. I have various expenses. This is the chicks I buy, the feed I need to buy, whatever it was, $50. Chick supply, it's bedding. That's what I spend on bedding. Processing for a couple of processing batches. So anyways, you get the idea. One of the main things I want to point out is I have a capital and overheads budget. So again, I don't, unless I can allocate a specific expense to an enterprise, I throw it in my overheads budget. And so, what do I have in here? Oh, fence. I'm working on some fences on a rental farm, the Peterson farm. I've got some fence. I got a water system I got to finish up. Some pasture seedings and things like that. Some different rent. Down here, so like electricity, insurance, some equipment repairs, labor, interest payments on an operating loan. And look at this. Oh, owner salary. Yep, that's in here. If you don't put it in the plan, it doesn't get paid, right? So again, and just point out like all these different things, these different enterprise budgets ultimately feed back into my master cash flow plan tab here. And so the main thing to watch is opening balance, right? And so when I updated this at the beginning of the month, I had $33,000 in my checking account, and you can just watch the money move throughout the year. May is not going to be looking super hot. June, we're back in the black. July, doggone it, we're losing money again. Good, we're back in the black, in August. So again, I made this budget in February. Well, now I know that unless I have major changes in May and July, I'm going to be short on cash. So I have multiple months to figure out how I'm going to do this. So that's where I will leave you.
Question for you.
Yeah, please.
How do you differentiate your mind between labor, owner, salary, and family living expenses?
So labor is what I pay other people. So I've got a high school kid that works for me. I pay him $15 an hour. And so he works for me 4 days a week for 8.5 hours a day. And so I know what I'm going to pay for that. So that's what that labor is built in. Yeah. Your family living or owner wage or whatever is whatever you set it at, right?
So you would consider the same thing then?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, I don't think there's a useful distinction between the two, I would say. Yeah.
You talked about all three, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'd say owner, well, family living or owner salary, whatever those. If there was other people that had to be paid, you know, off of the farm, then sure you'd throw their salaries in there too, yeah.
Do you keep track of your own personal labor between enterprises to see if you have one that's sucking up all your time versus
Yes.
the other things that need to be?
I do, and so I didn't show you my enterprise budgets, but I have that labor in my enterprise budget. Yeah. It's really easy to do on chickens and my custom heifers because like it's very predictable chores. Like I know that it takes about an hour and 10 minutes a day to take care of my chickens. I know that on Mondays, it takes me 4 hours to take care of all the heifers. On Tuesday, it takes me 2 hours to take care of all the heifers. On Wednesday, it takes me 4 hours. On Thursday, it takes me 2 hours. And on Friday, it takes me 6 hours because of the way that I have my chores split up to do all the different farms and whatever on the day. Beef enterprises that are year-round and variable are hard. I would say do your best, and because that's better than not doing it at all. And so, like for example, in the summertime, and I didn't show you. I don't raise my own beef cattle anymore. I have my best friend custom grazes them for me because I make more money custom grazing heifers than I did raising my own beef cattle, which is important because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know that, right? And so to me, the beef enterprise is more of an equity business now than anything. I mean, it still generates some cash, but not a lot anymore because I'm paying it all the labor. I'm paying all the labor that I wasn't paying myself. I'm paying it all. I'm paying that all out to my buddy Greg now. I'm losing track. What was your? I'm sorry. Did I answer your question?
You answered.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do your best, and you figure it out as you go, right? I like cow calf guys. Like sometimes you're working an hour a day. Sometimes you're working 4 hours a day. Depends on what you got going on that day, right? So it can be a challenge, but do your best.
When you set up that budget, are you constantly tweaking it?
Oh yes. Yep. I'll put a pin in that. If I don't come back to it, bring it up again. A lot of different tools. So I just use Excel spreadsheets. UW Madison has a pretty good cash flow planning tool. I wouldn't say it's like super awesome for grazing enterprises, but for more traditional enterprises, it has a lot of good, has a good cash flow planning tool. Iowa State has a cash flow spreadsheet. FinPack, which is a software I use a lot for farm financial planning. Comes to the University of Minnesota. It has some cash flow planning tools in it. I don't like them, but you can use them. Their annual plan, to your point, I use that all the time for my farmers for giving them their bank cash flow plan because it's super easy to do an annual plan in FinPack. It is not easy to do a monthly cash flow plan in FinPack. So, I don't know. So now that I've rattled on about cash flow planning, are you guys doing cash flow planning? What are you using for that tool?
I just missed the same one.
What do you, by enterprise or just on Excel?
Well,
Or?
I just have basically one enterprise.
Okay,
It's pretty easy.
that makes it easy, yeah. But on an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just write it down. I don't use Excel.
You're handwriting it out for every month? Oh man, you're hardcore. Good
I
for
just
you.
don't like computers. So.
Okay. I can't trust myself at math, so I have to let Excel do the math for me. But anybody else doing?
Can I do it like quarterly now?
Okay. Whatever you find useful to you, right? That's really what it comes down to, is whatever provides
Well,
value and
like
utility.
pretty much every farm in the fall is gonna have fall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. Absolutely fair. Yeah, like I
You
said.
pretty much know what's gonna happen when you start doing it for a whole year. Self-explanatory.
Well,
But I mean, you actually have different enterprises, so you have different income throughout the year.
yes.
When you have one enterprise when all your income's in 1 month, basically, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence why I don't rely on cow-calf
Yeah.
farming. It's a
Yeah.
tough,
It is.
I mean, yeah, cow-calf is the worst cash flowing business about that there is. You get 1 point of revenue.
Well, I guess I direct market half my calves, so that helps.
Okay. What do you mean by direct marketing the calves?
Well, so I have income a little bit spread out, because like,
You're selling them right off the farm as opposed to a sale
Yeah.
barn, or?
yeah,
Okay. Okay, yeah, that helps.
on the land I finished some, so it's different, I guess.
Oh, you do have a different enterprise. Yep, finishing, but if you run the numbers on,
Yeah, a lot better finish.
is it? You get a higher margin
Well,
on?
not this year we sell calves.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm telling everybody. Take the money, stupid. Yeah.
If you don't make money this year, you shouldn't be doing it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Every dairy farmer that tries to finish their own steers, you got way too much money at risk. Just sell the day.
Now.
Take the $700 guaranteed
Well,
for
the
that.
worst part about it, if you do that, then you lose all your customers, then they go somewhere else.
You know, you can't jump in and out. This is true.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you do? Yeah, Nicole.
No.
Oh.
Following along. I did have a question though. I mean, kind of with Jason's analogy or comparison, it starts simple on the napkin, move to the, you know, the spreadsheet, or how did that work for you in your farm journey? Did you start right away keeping the Excel spreadsheets, or at what point did you like really focus in on making sure every month you're sitting down and putting these, you know, calculations in?
I mean, I have.
Something's better than nothing.
Well, I would say I still have random scraps of paper and envelopes that are scattered around the kitchen. Like you never graduate away from that. I don't think. I don't know, Rick. You've been doing this longer than the rest of us. You still, yeah. You still always have random scraps of paper with notes laying around. But
in the cup holder of your truck.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when you remember stuff, and then you write it down while you're driving.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll put that in the computer later.
Yeah, and then you find it 6 months later, and
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've been keeping spreadsheets my whole time just because they're a useful tool. But definitely things get honed over time, right? And so, you can give me one the next one, Kristen. If you don't know, if you haven't started before, the best thing you can do is start today, right? And you're going to improve the process as you go along. Especially, I mean, how many of you have been doing this for like less than 3 years? Oh, yeah, a bunch of you, yeah. Like, you haven't quite figured out like what is that flow of income and expenses, right? And so you're making your best guess. And every year you learn a little more and you get a little better and you get more honed in on it, right? Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought. I've been working with several people who are trying to get started right now. And the conversation about cow calf, that is like the worst enterprise for this. It takes forever to get ramped up where you have a decent cash flow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who I've been working with who are getting started, and they're like, we're starting out with pigs or chickens or sheep is one who a lot of people are starting with.
Yeah.
Because the cash flow is better. And that's one of the toughest things with the cow calf. And that's why custom grazing works too. It's like you're not investing in the animal.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot better cash flow.
Yeah, that's
And you don't have the capital.
100%. You have nobody else's money at risk, or you don't have your own money at risk. It's somebody else's money. Yeah. That's the biggest reason why I got into custom grazing efforts. Is I wanted something that provided predictable, consistent cash flow. So it fits the bill. Yeah. Okay. So like you saw in my plan, right? I have a hole in May and July. I know that now, months ahead of time. So now I have the opportunity to be proactive and figure out, what am I going to do? How do I fix that cash flow crunch? Right? The number one thing to do is, okay, go back to the plan. What can we tweak? What can we sell more of? What can we sell at a higher price? What can we spend less on? You know, like, I mean, the opportunities are limitless, right? Like, just because we think this is the way that we should farm and these are our income and expenses doesn't mean that's the way it has to be, right? Like, to Jason's point, are you gonna, like, I love that thing you pulled out of the RFP book. You know, do we double our scale or do we reduce our cost, right? It's just two different ways of thinking about getting to the same point. Same thing here. You know, if we have a hole in the cash flow, should our initial thing be, well, I guess we got to go borrow money, or should it be, what can we change about the way that we're managing our farm? Can we restructure the way that that money moves through our operation throughout the year to fix those holes? So just things to think about, right? Your initial plan should not be the final plan. Like, this is, you put those numbers in. If you like what you see at the end, sure, I guess, but like oftentimes more than not, you don't necessarily like exactly what you see. So massage the numbers, figure out what can we change, what can we adapt to make it work. You know, so for example, what can we push off purchasing? So if you were trying to make a big capital expenditure, like say we wanted to buy a tractor in May. Like, oh no, well, if we do that, then our cash flow in July is gonna suck, so can we push that off to August? Now, maybe you need it, maybe not, but just an example, like what can we do to shift cost to later in the year when we might have some money? What can we sell, particularly underutilized assets? Again, to Jason's point about legacy assets and things. You probably got a bunch of stuff sitting around. This only gets you so far, but like, especially starting off, should you own all that stuff? Can you sell some of it to provide some cash flow, right? You got a bunch of machinery sitting in the weeds in the fence row that hasn't moved in 10 years. It's not doing you any good sitting there. Get rid of it, you know? I've got a gravity wagon sitting in my barn right now that I don't need anymore. I got to get my butt in gear and put it on Facebook Marketplace, get rid of it, get my money back out of it. And this is a little bit of an aside about capital allocation, to your point, like where do you invest your money? Like when you have stuff, every day that you decide not to sell something is a day you decide to buy it, right? Like that, there is capital tied up in that piece of equipment, tied up in that animal. If you keep it, you have made the decision, whether you did it, purposefully or not, to not capture that value back in cash. So that's a kind of aside. But okay, can you borrow your way through it? I mean, sometimes you just got to borrow some money, right? And that's why annual operating loans or lines of credit exist, right? I broke down and I got my very first line of credit last week because I wasn't sure I was going to get paid on an equip contract. Sounds like I'm probably going to get paid on it now, which is good. But now I've got that in my back pocket if I need it. Nothing wrong with that, but there's a cost there, right? If I decided to, that whatever $6,000 hold I'm going to have this summer, I'm going to pay 8% interest on that money if I borrow it. So it's not free. Farms sometimes run into issues with term debt structure. Say you bought a piece of equipment on a 4-year note and payments are just too big. You should have probably bought it on a 6-year note. Or land. I dealt with a farm one time that bought a pile of land on like 10 and 15-year terms. And it's just like it was just destroying his cash flow. Like he was going to go broke, not because he wasn't profitable, but because his debt was structured so poorly that there was no money left. And so it took a long fooling around with the bank, but we got things restructured at the reasonable terms so that it freed up his cash flow, right? So if you have different debts, don't look at the structure of that. Not that, I don't like to refinance stuff and push things off. Like, I'm very debt averse to begin with, but like if you have debt that is crushing you because of the payment structure, in the long run, you'll be better off refinancing it. So, anyway, all right, Kristen. Okay, so I made this plan in February. Is that where it stays? Absolutely not. We go back to the plan all the time. This is the Excel document that I basically leave open on my computer year round. Every month, I want to check it. And I don't necessarily go through line by line, but I look at that opening balance. So on March 1st, I haven't done it yet, but go look at my bank statement. Does my opening balance on my cash flow match what's actually in my bank account? If they're not within a couple $100, like there was a somewhat major deviation from the plan, so I better go back and check. And then I update that opening balance every month as I go through the year to make sure that, like the next phase of things is still going to line up, right? So we're going to compare actuals versus the plan. And anytime that there's a major deviation from the plan, so you had an unexpected expense, or you had some animals die, or the prices took a tank and what we expected we were going to get paid, go back to the plan, update those numbers, and see where we're sitting. And then anytime there's major decisions to be made, so I got this cow picture up here. I bought that. She was a group of cows that I bought this fall. Again, one of these scenarios where a guy approached me with some very nice grass cattle that I had no intention of buying, but when opportunity knocks, you open the door. And so, had to check the cash flow plan, see what things are going to work, if things are going to work out. I was able to buy them. On the flip side, I had the I still have the opportunity. to get 96.5 acres, which will, you know, add a third, you know, add 33% more to land to my farm than I have right now. Does not work in the cash flow plan this year, but I talked with the guy. I'm going to be able to get it next year, but I had to make the hard decision to say, if you're willing to let it go, I was going to do it. If you was, these opportunities don't show up every day, and so like I was going to figure it out somehow or another. But because he was willing to work with me, I was able to say, it's not going to work this year, but if you give me a year to save up a wad, I'll be able to do this next year. So he's working with me with that. But having one of the hardest things we have to do as business owners is know when to say no. It's really easy to say yes to every opportunity and every idea that comes along, but sometimes you have to say no. And knowing and trusting your numbers allows you to have confidence, to be able to say yes or no when decisions need to be made. So, all right. So my concluders, monthly cash flow planning is a vital tool to manage the money that flows through your farm. Again, you can be profitable 5 years from now, but if you run out of cash on the way, it didn't do you any good. So there's a variety of tools available to help you organize your plan. I'm a big fan of just using good old Excel, but whatever suits your fancy. And the big thing I want you to take away from this is like you have options to manage the cash flow. You know, just because this is what you think you should spend your money on and the income that you think you have, like that is not set in stone. You have the ability to make changes. And so use the cash flow planning process as an opportunity to find these opportunities to reduce expenses, increase costs, shift payment structures, whatever the case may be, to improve your cash flow. And the biggest thing it allows us to do is to be proactive. We're planning ahead. We're not ending up in the middle of the summer with no money in our bank account, and then we have to come beg to the bank, I'm out of money, please give me money. We know well ahead of time what the year is approximately going to bring, so we can plan accordingly. So that'll do her. So any other questions? And for that, I don't know. I guess I'll sit down. You guys want to? We should. Anything for Jason and I? Jason and I are gonna have to talk more.
Yeah, we can take questions. I'll let you know if anybody in the chat has a question for you.
Yeah.
So they can speak out loud on the. Just speak out loud or raise your hand, your virtual hand.
Aaron, what's your margin of error on your spreadsheet, actual versus planned for? Like, are you looking at $20? Like, oh no, something went real wrong, or?
No, I mean, a few thousand. I mean, it depends on, it depends on the scale, right? I mean, if you're talking about something that your gross revenue for the year, you only expect to make $10,000, $1,000 is a 10% change. That's a pretty big one, right? But, you know, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, like a few $1,000 one way or another doesn't make or break you, right? Whatever margin you're comfortable with. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, I would say. I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do either of you guys actually take all the stuff that you talked about here and extend that out for a 5 or a 10-year look at where you want to be with it?
We do. I was just thinking, when we started our the only reason we started grazing, and I shouldn't even admit this, as now somehow I ended up being the grazing specialist, but like it wasn't even on our radar. But my father-in-law was retiring from his whole career in business acquisition, and so I asked him to help develop a business plan, and it was completely eye-opening to me how hard it is to make money farming. And so his goal was to plan it out 5 years, and I kept saying in those, like before we even started, like, this is a farm, not a business. I'm almost embarrassed to say that now, and I was saying that in like, you don't really understand farming, you only understand business. And he's like, well, I thought this was supposed to be a business. So yeah, we would go 5 years out, and that's every year we update it 5 years out.
That's the advantage I have coming into this completely green, not having ever raised anything more than a few tomato plants, is that I thought it was a business. So that's how we kind of looked at it from the beginning, not that we have all that kind of data or anything yet, but that's always been in my mind that, you know, it's gotta be profitable year after year after year.
I do think that is a real advantage. I think that's something that's helped me in particular, you know, that I didn't have preconceived notions of what this was supposed to be like. I find the most success working with the farms that I do, some of the easiest ones to reach are the people that are coming in, you know, like say, completely green.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're teachable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, this is an aside, but in my position, the best interns I've ever had have been students who didn't come from a farm. The students who came from a farm, we always tend to think that they're going to be really hardworking. And I came from a farm, so I'm not throwing them under the bus, but they come in knowing everything. And the students who don't, they just want to learn. So, and I think we see that too with farmers.
Yeah.
So you guys sit down with farmers and help walk them through some of this stuff?
I do. That's my job. Yeah.
Okay.
But he doesn't rely
No. Green Bay's not gonna.
Could you talk about at all, like, maybe you did a little with your, Pastures Take, Aaron, but like, how has your business plan changed over time based on cash flow planning and seeing, you know, how the business, like the money side of things is, how does that change your actual business plan?
So I didn't answer your question about long term because my farm has been nothing but a series of moving goalposts. So when we started, we had 30 acres, and this was going to be a hobby. We were going to be a profitable hobby, but it was going to be a hobby, right? And then over time, it's like, oh, like we're kind of getting good at this, and we can see there's potential. So let's do this, and let's add this, and grow here, and grow there, and now here we are. So everything seems to always change for me, and I'm always in perpetual growth mode because I'm a dirty, greedy capitalist, and I never have enough, it seems. But the structure of our business has really changed a lot in the last 3 years when I really started to, we hit this point where it was like, okay, we're farming, we're doing this, like we're making money, but golly, this is a lot of work. And I could do a lot more efficient on the pasture grow or sitting in my deer stand if I wasn't doing this. And so like, what is this really all for? Yes, it's kind of a cool lifestyle, but it takes a ton. It is a huge trade-off to your family and your lifestyle, right? I mean, like if all you want to do is feed cows and chase chickens, that's fine. But if your family wants to take a break, to go away, to do something else, like owning livestock is a huge burden on that, right? And so I got to the point where it's like, if I'm going to continue to do this at any reasonable scale, we want to make some serious money. And that's when I started really getting serious about what enterprises are going to generate the most money. Because I'll be honest, like I came into this with very simple ideology. When we started, I had 3 things I wanted. Number one, it had to be good for the land. I came for the conservation side of this. That's where I entered grazing. I'm still there. It had to be good for my family, and it was starting to get to the point that like my wife was, I think, getting a little bit resentful of the farm, that it was taking so much effort and time away from me. And the third thing is it had to be financially viable. And yeah, we were like quote unquote making money, but was it enough to justify the effort? And that's where I went through and really started focusing on what are the things that generate money and what is just ancillary stuff that is like, I do it because I think I'm supposed to do it because Joel Salatin said I'm supposed to have pastured pigs and pastured poultry and grass-fed beef and the sawmill and all the other things that he tells you need to do. It's like, okay, what are the things, what is making the money and what is just a distraction? And I'll be honest, like the pastured pigs, they make money. We've never lost money raising pigs. We always make money. But at the end of the day, at the scale we're at, it's $3,000 net to the bottom line. It's like, okay, great. Like,
do both use direct market all your beef, or Are you using sale barns to get rid of the extras?
I direct market all my stuff. I mean, other than, sometimes we'll buy groups of calves to supplement our herd because we're going with cows yet. And then I'll pick through them, like give them 6 months. And the ones that look like they're gonna finish well, we'll keep, and the rest of them we ditch. But other than that,
Okay. I'm gonna interject, and Aaron's being modest, but I'm gonna toot his horn a little bit because he's integrating what he's doing in his day job as a farm business training instructor, integrating that in his farm business to analyze the profitability of it. It's available for all of us. I mean, our public education system, the technical college system, all of the spreadsheets that the extension service and the university have available are great tools at a reasonable cost. There's a little bit of cost, or some of them are even free. There are some expensive consultants. You can hire professional consultants that will take every last ounce of profit from your farm to come up with the same outcome that Aaron talked about.
Well, and most of them will tell you how to do the practices on the land, but they won't take it as far as the economics.
I know Aaron's predecessor was my consultant to start. We were dairy at the time, and that was how I essentially got started when I became a farmer.
Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just passed away last week,
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So you direct marketing 5,000 broilers?
No. I sell most of those wholesale.
Okay.
Yeah. I still do like 300 a year off the farm. But no, most.
More reasonable.
Yeah, I tell you what, wholesale is the way to go. I don't know. So much nicer to just drop them off and walk away and get a check at the end of the day. It's a good way to go. But I mean, to that point, like, to kind of feed into Jason's enterprise selection thing, it's like, that is part of the equation, right? You capture the most value direct marketing, but is that what you want to spend your time doing? Because the more and more I do it, the more and more time and effort it takes, right?
Yeah, you make more.
Yeah. Just the time, if nothing else, yeah.
No, you got the time to put the marketing into it. And okay, you sold 3 chickens, and then there's a little lady, but if you spent 2 hours talking to her while you dropped them off.
100%.
Now you gotta count all that time.
Yep. And it's
supposed to keep track of that time?
Well,
I hate to say it too, but like I very rarely, when people pick up at the farm, I very rarely make time to talk with them. Now I feel like it's in the cooler by the shed. Come get it whenever you want it.
yeah.
And not always, but it's like you just got other things going on.
See, I look at that as a fun part, you know, when customers come direct from my door, and I can, you know, get to know people in the community. That's part of our business plan, and our vision was to do that.
Well, when you get to know your customers, you take that into account when you schedule certain ones. Like, this guy's gonna take a lot of time. But he keeps coming back, so I gotta give him the time.
Help a little lady to invite you for dinner and, you know, get some other benefits out of the situation.
Yeah, I shouldn't be so flippant about it. It's true. Like, every conversation, you feel good afterward, right?
Yeah.
But there is
That's that fulfillment that, you know, Jason talked about earlier. Just what's in it for you? What gives you passion? And why are we doing this in the first place? You know, the bottom line isn't the only thing. It's also about
Well, and
loving what you do. And
to answer your question about direct marketing, so that's where the enterprise budget made it very clear for us that, like, if we want to make this worth it at all, we have to get more for these animals than what we would get at the sales barn.
And that was the main thing that drove us with bison. Is I can't compete with all my neighbors who do beef. They're established. They, you know, everybody from the community knows them and all that stuff. They need something different. And then the direct marketing, there's really not a big other option. And you're gonna try to get in the grocery stores or whatever with bison. That's tough, especially as a small producer. So this is all kind of, each piece of it is kind of fit together on the path that we're going pretty nicely.
Yeah.
Through you, cow-calf guys, are you doing any sort of active marketing?
To sell feeders?
Yeah, like you're selling calves, right? I mean, you are cow-calf.
Right.
Like, are you just showing up to the sale barn on the feeder sale day, or are you doing video auctions, online auctions, any hedging, stuff like that?
I have a couple of
Okay.
neighbors in sale barn, depending on the year. They're around here, a lot of the cattle feeders, so they don't. I wouldn't call it active, no. Yeah, I just have a guy that buys mine too, but I'd like to get into more direct sales and sell beef instead.
Maybe you do.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, you make it, this year you're not gonna make any more doing that. Yeah. Cause I did the numbers much. Several years, it's guaranteed money. Yeah. But you still gotta sell your. Well, I know, your meat, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought of that too, and the risk with taking the easy money on years like this is then your market for when the prices go back down might be gone.
Yeah.
So
You can't jump in and out of direct marketing. You gotta stay.
I know, I still did, but I mean, I just didn't more.
Yeah. And this is why we have crazy beef prices, because you probably sold half the heifers that you raised, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to keep any of it anyway.
Yeah.
It worked out good this year.
Yeah. But everybody's done that same math. That's the problem. That's why we don't. I'm not saying like it's not your, I'm not criticizing. Like take the money.
I did the math and I
Yeah.
could buy it for a heifer.
Yeah.
Give me a calf
100%.
a year. Earlier.
Yeah.
A year earlier.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
And have better calf.
No, that's good. Good. For, like this is
But
good. This is good. Yeah. No, you
But
good.
not everybody, because there's always some crazy.
Yeah.
I have a small question. Is there any market scenario where cow-calves will end up to be better than custom grazing? Like, no.
Oh, I wouldn't say no. It's hard in Wisconsin.
If you're starting out, the calf will expense much better.
Yeah. So cash flow wise, no. Like custom grazing is awesome because we have such little expense and consistent income. On a true enterprise profitability wise, it's very variable. I would say in Wisconsin, it's challenging because we have such an extended winter feed season, right? So if you can find ways to reduce your winter feed costs, yeah, you can. Like, I'm not going to tell you that you can't be profitable. You know, I'm very profitable at it, but we're fighting an uphill battle here. We don't. We just don't have an environment that's conducive to it.
I have an uncle who does over 1,000 stockers every year, and he keeps telling me to get out of the cow-calf business because there's no money to be made in that. But I disagree with that because I think if you're at capacity, what's expensive is getting up to capacity. But if you get to a point where you can self-sustain it and you're not buying animals anymore, I think it works.
Yeah, that's where I see my biggest thing too, because I have all my animals.
Growth is expensive.
Yeah.
Growth is expensive. Yep.
You guys heard of Wally Olson at all?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that sell by in your comment. Yep.
Yeah, well, he talks about bell curve.
Yep.
You know, your 500-pound feeder heifer is basically the same price as your cull cow.
Yeah.
And that you capture that appreciated value when you sell that 5-year-old bred cow, as opposed to keeping her until she's a cull cow.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of makes sense to me, but then if you're selling your breds and then retaining or buying open heifers, either have to have a lot of cheap feed, or it kind of goes back to your cash flow thing of, you know, you're waiting a long time for that heifer then to give you an animal. I understand the depreciation argument, but.
Yeah, and I'd say like I listen to Wally a lot. I like that sell by marketing thing, I think makes a lot of sense. I think the thing to keep in mind is with a lot of this stuff, you don't have, it's not all or nothing, right? So you don't have to sell your entire cow herd when they turn 6 years old, right? You know, you can.
Just sell it through.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah. Well, and to your point, what's your cash flow allow?
Some people are better at.
Yeah.
You guys could have taught this.
I listen to too many podcasts.
What podcast you listening to?
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know, he sends me a lot, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Open them.
I sent him to his wife, so she can play them for him. Profitable Steward, Ranching Reboot, Herd Quitter,
Yeah.
or now Ranching Returns.
Ranching Returns, yeah.
Working Cows, I like that one a lot. Ranchonomics.
That's my new favorite.
John Haskell, he's pretty good with Ranch Right. Yeah.
He's a truck driver, so he just listens to it all day.
Yeah, that's my day job, so I listen to podcasts every day.
Yeah.
Shoots in here.
Yeah. Yeah, my Bluetooth headphones get it worked out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Give them a round of applause.